Hello, this is your host, Austin Hopkins, and welcome to the Introvert Leader Podcast. Today's episode is titled Strength Zone. Today we're going to talk about your strength zone, how to find it, how to operate in it, how to identify it in others, all things strength zone. But before we jump into it, I always like to give a little update on what I've been up to recently. So music-wise, I've been going back and revisiting Nas's old catalog. Nas is a hip-hop artist from the 90s who, in my opinion, is still at the top of his game. Most recently, I've been listening to King's Disease and King's Disease 2, not necessarily new albums, but fantastic. And my go-to song is Replace Me. So if you're looking for a vibe, highly recommend revisiting Nas's old stuff. And what I've been watching is this new show called Last of Us on HBO Max. And I got to tell you, I'm hooked. It's only been 3 episodes, but this show is pretty darn good. And the reason I like it is it's got heart, it's got action, it's got a love story. And most importantly, it's got flesh-eating zombies. So when you put all 3 of those things together, it's a recipe for success, in my opinion. So I want to transition and talk about why we're even discussing strength zones. And, I think, a strength zone, how I really like to define it is, that perfect intersection of what you enjoy and what you're good at that also adds values to others. So the reason I want to talk about that is, I think all of us have something that makes us unique, different from everyone else on earth, right? It might be your education, it might be your family upbringing, could be your work experience, your hobbies, your passions, you name it. We all have something that makes us unique and at the same time can add values to others. So today we're going to talk about what a strength zone is, how I found my strength zone, and hopefully, you'll leave today's episode with a little bit more knowledge on how to identify it and how to operate in a strength zone. So, for me personally, my strength zone wasn't even something that I picked. I kind of feel like it almost picked me in some ways. So I want to tell you a little story of, how I found my strength zone, and hopefully it will illustrate just how random, it can be to kind of stumble upon the things that you enjoy, but you're also good at. So I'm going to take you back. It's 2017. I'm working at a major bank as a branch manager. I'd been working for the same company for around 10 years at this point. And I was feeling stuck, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. I had found, early success and was moving up the company ladder, as they say, but I felt I was being underutilized and that I was capable of more. And for those of you out there who know what that feeling is, how frustrating, how much it sucks, right? Because you feel like you can do more. You feel like there's, more gas in the tank, but you're just not able to do it. So, during this time, I had made it clear to my boss that I wanted to do more, right? And that I'd be willing to take on new projects, if there was a need. So one day, I think about 4 to 5 months later, my boss came to me with a new project. And he told me that I was going to be tasked with taking a group of around 20 to 25 inexperienced bankers to the next level. So these bankers were spread across the region. They were mostly green. They had very little experience with a formal sales process. So, I knew I had my work cut out for me. So I spent the next few weeks creating a plan, talking with the teammates to see what they wanted to improve. And, as I'm going through these conversations and I'm interacting with the team, I started to realize that they had kind of a common obstacle that they were all facing. And really what it was confidence. They had the desire to be successful, but they lacked the confidence that they could do it. So leading up to the day of the training, I got to admit, I was nervous, right? I was unsure if my plan would be effective, but most importantly, I was kind of unsure if the team would be willing to try my new ideas, right? This was kind of the first time where I'd be doing a project where I didn't necessarily have that title, right? They didn't necessarily report to me. So, at the end of the day, it was up to them whether or not they were going to try something new and kind of follow me, if you will. So I launched the training, and I got some great support from the attendees. And then that's where kind of the fun began. I set up weekly touch points with all of the attendees to ensure that they had the one-on-one support they needed. We chatted via phone, email, chat, Google chat, you name it. And we discussed the strategies that they had learned and how they were trying them and what obstacles they were facing. And then something special started to happen. But like clockwork, the entire group started to improve their performance and their skill set. I saw insecure teammates find their strength. I saw the top performers help the ones that were struggling. And I saw this underserved group find success. During that project, I noticed that all the many hours I spent planning and following up with teammates and helping them grow, went by like nothing. I didn't mind the effort. In fact, I kind of looked forward to the time I could spend at the end of the night inspiring and leading that group. Right? I enjoyed helping those insecure teammates find the confidence that they needed. So at the end of the quarter, I'm happy to say that the team achieved amazing results. They ended up blowing their goals out of the water at over 165%. But most importantly, that team of inexperienced bankers found their strength. And, this experience was so important to me because it allowed me to find something that not only I was good at, something that I enjoyed, but something that added value, right? And I'm happy to say, as a result of those training, I got to watch many of those teammates go on to do amazing things and, take risks in their careers and take on leadership roles. And, and I'm happy to say I'm still in contact with many of them still today. And I'll never forget that experience, right? Because I kind of fell into this coaching, leading, inspiring situation at work. But I noticed that when I found it, I loved it. So now that I've told you a little story about kind of how I identified my strength zone and started to operate in it, I want to give you guys a couple of different tips, if you will, that can help you start to identify your strength zone. So the first one is curiosity can lead to inspiration. So what I mean by that is being curious about things, trying things that you haven't done before can lead to inspiration, right? You might try something that you never even thought you were interested in or that could be you could be good at, but maybe you are. So being curious and kind of having that open mind will really, really help in identifying things that you could call your strength zone. So start to ask yourself questions like, what am I interested in? What's a problem I think I could solve for people? What are the kind of things that get me excited? So sit down, pen and paper, on the computer, however you take notes, and start to ask yourself those questions and do some journaling, right? Write down some of the ideas that pop in your mind. So I think the next one is taking many small risks. So I think we all know, the importance of taking risks, but just because we know the value of it doesn't mean that we're always willing to do it. So I'm a big believer in taking risks in the pursuit of finding your strength zone. I believe though, they can be scary, right? But they're super necessary. So risks could be things like volunteering for an extra assignment at work, even though your plate's full. It could be taking a risk and maybe taking on a project where you're not an expert. You're not the smartest person on the project. Maybe it's volunteering to get involved at your church or in a club you're a part of, right? So, trying things that maybe might not go so well, but they're a small risk, right? So if you screw up and if things don't go well, you're no worse off than you were before. So I think that's another big one. And then I would say the another one that really, really helps when identifying your strength zone is trying as many things as you can. So at work, right, that's volunteering as often as possible, telling your boss that you're willing to take on more, saying yes to as many things as possible, and then connect with someone doing a job that seems interesting, right? This doesn't have to be a formal connect. It doesn't have to be a mentorship, but maybe it's as simple as you calling Susie, who works in accounting, and saying, "Hey, Susie, I'm kind of interested in accounting. I want to know a little bit more about like what a day in the life looks like. Can I spend 4 hours with you tomorrow?" Right? It could be informal, but you're trying something new. You're getting exposed to things that you haven't before that may just lead to inspiration. Personally wise, that could be trying stuff that seems interesting, right? So maybe that's a new hobby, right? I have a buddy of mine that's recently started to pick up guitar and he's absolutely loving it, right? He may not become a rock star, but it's something that he enjoys. Maybe it's taking a Udemy class. Udemy is a really interesting online learning platform that allows you to take classes on pretty much anything you can imagine for as little as, I think, $10. So, the risk there is small, right? You get to take a class, I know personally over the last year, I've taken 3 or 4. I took a really interesting class on product management. I took a really interesting class on telling stories with data. Again, really easy way to get exposed to things you haven't before. And then finally, I would say when you're identifying your strength zone, it's all about that test, learn, and repeat, right? So you got to keep trying things. You got to keep taking little risks. You got to be learning, and then you got to repeat it over and over again, right? And I would say patience is a really big one, because I'm a big believer in life that the things that you force, the things that you worry about and stress about, usually don't end up happening and coming true. I'm a big believer that when you kind of take the pressure off and you say to yourself, hey, you know what? I'm going to just take life as it comes. I'm going to not put a timeline on when I need to find my strength zone or when I need to get that promotion. It takes the pressure off, and you're open more to opportunities. Your blinders are kind of taken down. So now that we talked a little bit about some of the different areas and ways that you can identify your strength zone, I want to transition and talk a little bit about identifying strength zones in others. So you might think, well, hey man, like I haven't even discovered my strength zone yet. Why am I going to go out here and try to help other people find theirs? And the short answer is because it's the right thing to do. But I believe seriously that we have the ability to help others around us. And it's our duty kind of to do so, right? And so, it can be as simple as keeping your eyes out when someone around you, coworker, family, friends, does something that they're good at that adds value. So next time you see someone doing something that you think, wow, they're really good at that. Maybe it's a presentation. Maybe you're working with Carol at work, and Carol does the very best presentations, but no one's told her that. So, she doesn't know that about herself, and she maybe doesn't even know that's her strength zone. So imagine you could go up to Carol and say, hey, Carol, just saw your most recent presentation, and I got to tell you, you killed it. This is fantastic, and I'd love for you to keep doing presentations with me for the rest of the year. Little things like that can go such a long way in helping to build someone's confidence. So again, super easy for you. But you keep your eyes open, right? When you see someone doing something special, something that not everyone else can do, make sure to recognize it, right? So now that we talked a little bit about kind of how to identify it in others and to help others, find their strength zone, I want to kind of finish up by talking about how to operate in your strength zone. And when I say operate, I mean, how do I live in my strength zone, even though life's going to get in the way? And we're going to maybe get distracted and we're going to get off course. And I think it's really, really important to think about kind of 2 things when you're operating in your strength zone. Number 1 is don't get distracted, right? As I said just a second ago, life can get in the way, but more importantly, the details of work and life can get in the way, right? So for me personally, right, my why, my strength zone is to help people become the best version of themselves. But, I had a day job, right? And during that day job, I had small tasks that I needed to do. Maybe it's budgeting, maybe it's doing a presentation. Well, those aren't necessarily my strength zone, but I needed to do them. So I tell you this to say, hey, make a conscious effort to get back to the things that you enjoy, the things that you're good at as soon as possible. Try to build that into every week or every day, little moments of the day where you can operate in your strength zone, because the more you operate in your strength zone, the more success you find. And it's as simple as that. And then I would say the second thing when it comes to operating your strength zone is really kind of reflecting on how you feel. So, after a project, after a situation, an interaction, reflect on how it felt to operate in your strength zone. I believe that kind of highlighting those little wins, even just internally within our own minds, is huge, right? Because it kind of sets up those patterns and pathways for the future where we get to think about how it felt to be in our strength zone, which is going to allow us to identify more opportunities to operate in our strength zone in the future. So celebrate the little wins and reflect on how you feel when you got to operate in your strength zone. I always like to wrap things up with kind of a call to action, a challenge, if you will, right? So I have a 2-part challenge today. First one's for those who don't know your strength zone. I want you to try one new thing this week. I want you to take a Udemy class. I want you to watch a YouTube video, listen to a podcast, volunteer for a project at work or school or church or whatever it is. Try one new thing this week, something that you think you might be interested in. And just maybe that will be a path towards your strength zone. For those of you who know your strength zone, well, you're the lucky ones. So I'm a big fan of helping those around us when things are going well, right? And so you found your strength zone. My ask of you is try to help one person discover their strength zone this week, right? Sometimes it just takes one other person to help us find our strength zone, to notice when we're doing something that we're good at or that we add value in. So make it a point this week to tell one person about something that they're doing well, right? And I promise you, even if that's not their strength zone, you're going to create a moment that really, really helps that person out. So I hope today you got some value in talking about strength zones, how to operate in them, how to identify it in others, and how to find yours. I want to say thank you as always for joining today's episode. And next episode is called ADD at Work. It's going to be about accepting your limitations, using that perceived weakness as a strength. And you're going to hear about my journey with ADD, what it's like to kind of be diagnosed later in life and how I am, 10 or 15 years later after that diagnosis. So again, thanks so much for listening in and make it a great day. The Introvert Leader Podcast. Subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday.